keep you single list. So just be cautious when you're creating them. But I personally created one myself, and the interesting part was my partner at the time met maybe one or two. That was just it. But he blew me away in other areas. And fast forward to us 8 years later, he meets all the criteria now, which is successful. He's in the creative realm, but he wasn't when I first met him. So people got to keep that in mind.
So your list was flexible.
My actually it wasn't, because I kept passing people by, but there was just something about him that was like, this is what he won me over with his compassion. That's what happened.
Yeah, because I always feel sometimes, I mean, can't this kind of backfire? Like, I know there have been times that, I've dated
So this
people.
is the interesting part. He claims he had no list.
I don't have a list. I mean, my thinking, first of all, I just know there have been times, for example, I may have dated somebody, and, especially when you have the first couple of days when you're getting to know somebody, you could hear them asking certain questions, and you can almost see them kind of checking off certain things. And, that's great, and I think this maybe goes to, what you're saying, Anzo, is that, it's great if somebody has the same values or, is looking for something in somebody, and it takes some time to get there. But when it seems like somebody is kind of like, vetting you, almost like you're on an interview, it just kind of, even if you feel like you may be hitting the marks of what they're asking for, it could be kind of a turnoff that you're not just looking for you as a person, you're looking for somebody who, checks off these things that are maybe on, a piece of paper. So, I never thought about it. She was always saying things about lists. I've always said I've had a list. I've certainly started to realize that, the people maybe I've had longer term relationships with, that, there's certain, trends that I start to realize, maybe I didn't notice in the beginning, but after a few years, you start to see
So
that.
you did have a list.
So I think whether you have like a physical checklist or you have a mental kind of sense of like, these are the people that I find attractive, whether it's someone who's kind, who's generous, someone who's loyal, someone who's compassionate, someone who's willing to kind of put themselves out there. And this is what relationships teach us. When we go through relationships, we kind of get a sense of, okay, this is what I like and this is what I didn't like. And so this is what I'm looking for more of, and this is what I want less of. So I think that, either way, whether you have a list in mind, as long as you have a sense of what are the things that are important to you, I think you're on the right track.
And I'm sorry. And as far as like not having a list, like think about it in your dating capacity back in the day, right? Obviously there was people, and this happens male, female, that are just, you meet them and they're just like a hot mess, whatever that is. So in your mind, like when the person shows up and they're not, okay, that takes me to to level 2 with this person, right? It's like playing a video game, right? You go level 1, level 2, and when you meet that hot mess for the first, for the first date, there might not be a second date, but when you meet, you go on a different date with somebody else and the hot messness isn't there, okay, we can probably go to date 2, but then something presents itself in date 2 and you're like, yep, not going to happen to date 3, and so that is, maybe it wasn't a physical list, but you have like an idea of what, you call it trends, but it's you have an idea of like what gels with you, what's going to work in your life, how you want that to show up,
sure.
Yeah.
And it's funny you mentioned values, because I think how I got to my list was, I was in a terrible relationship and I was on the phone crying to my mother, and she's like, Nia, you need to be dating people who share your values. And it was just like a big light bulb, as cliche as that sounds. And I realized nobody I dated seriously, ever shared my values. And so Jason is actually like the first person I've ever dated that actually shared. But see, the problem was I didn't know what my values were. Right? I didn't actually, and I was, a little younger, but I didn't take the time to understand what those values were. So I kind of just took a year off from dating to figure that out before I got back in the game. And then eventually met Jason. But something I wanted to ask you both, because we are talking about young adults, right? And I know that a lot of the things that we go through are not unusual to, our parents' generations, but we do face some challenges that they didn't experience because of a couple of things, or rather a host of factors. And just a couple, include, the tech revolution, you've got the recession of 2008, and then the economic fallout from that as well, and a bunch of other, socioeconomic factors that really do play a part. So I wanted to ask you, what kind of obstacles do some of your clients who are, young adults encounter when they're, I guess, trying to date, trying to have a long-term relationship, that you see kind of like across the board, that kind of are common among young adults today?
So one of the things that I tend to see very commonly is this sense of, I don't know if entitlement is the right word, but this expectation that things are naturally going to progress one after the other. Like, so this is the generation which has kind of gone through school, and, it's been, for the most part, smooth sailing, and then what comes next? It's like, okay, so I am going to go to college, and then, for some, it's a smooth sailing there, and then what comes next? It's a job. So in some way, there's like this built-in expectation that one after the other things are going to start falling into place. And for some, they don't, and and that teaches them something different. But for a lot of us, we've kind of smooth sailed through some of these experiences. And so when it comes to relationships, it's like, why can I not find that person? Like, it's almost as if it's something that I expect to happen, so I deserve to have it happen, and why is it not happening? So then there's frustration about that process. So that's one thing that I see commonly. And then the other thing that I see frequently as well is difficulty with frustration tolerance. So difficulties with other people are bound to disappoint us. I mean, that's what relationships are about. Like, people are inherently disappointing. But we kind of don't take that into the mix of things, and we kind of we want to have these great, fantastic,
perfect,
blow my mind out kind of relationship, and it doesn't always happen that way. And we have to kind of be willing to kind of step back and see, okay, things are sticky, and that's what life is about, and we have to figure it out and see if this is something we want to work out or not. But that's something that I see a lot as well, this inability to kind of work through and kind of want an easy fix, an easy out. Like, I want this to change, and I want it to change quick, and I want the other person to change, and I want them to change quick. Like, it's either they have to change or I'm out of here. So kind of working with this age group means kind of, building in some realistic expectations of what relationships are like, as well as a healthy sense of expectations from themselves and other people.
Wow, that's a mouthful. Nando, how about you?
So what I like, what I see, and what I've been tracking is the Yelp generation, is what I like to call it, right? Wow. So you go to a restaurant and you order something, it is not to your satisfaction. What's the first thing you do? You don't even complain to the manager. You go to Yelp and you write a bad review, right?
Does that mean there's some stars about me out there, on some
there was a platform that was coming up, and I think it might still exist, where you can rate your boyfriend.
Dated. Oh my
God. Yeah. And can you imagine just can you imagine just the chaos surrounding it? But my point is, and to your point, which is, the frustration, we don't know how to deal with it. It's just like, we're out of control. And I attribute like a lot of this, it's just entered our way of being, which is the reality show aspect of things, right? So it's like everything is a competition. Everyone's trying to win. Everyone's trying to be the best. And, you're flipping tables and you're backstabbing friends to get what you want.
Glasses.
You're writing bad reviews. And it's just like, in a relationship, it just doesn't work that way. Or if it does work that way for you, then you're going to be single for a very long time, because another aspect of the Yelp generation and the reality show generation is no one's taking responsibility for their part either. It's always, you're not meeting my needs, you're not making me happy. I was walking down the street 2 weeks ago and I literally heard somebody on the phone, I don't care about what you think, you're not meeting my needs. This was right in front of H&M, and I'm like, girl, calm down.
Right.
Like, let's talk about this, and
take my card.
And that's at the forefront of everything. You're responsible for making me happy.
How much do you think social media plays a part in what you just said?
So I'm huge on social media and I love social media. And in fact, one of my cousins just took like a month off and I'm like, why are you taking a month off? Like, how are you using this? And people will go through detoxes, right? And I think it's just the way you use it. Like I've been on social media since 2007, and I think it was the time when like Twitter, people were just trying to figure out what like Twitter was.
Right.
Popeyes was using it to do customer service, and then JetBlue came on, and I only had like 3 followers like for the longest time. When I remember I threw a little mini party when I hit like 50 followers. Now I'm at 10,000, but it's like
you are somebody.
In the realm of social, absolutely not. In the realm of like all these reality stars that they're in the millions. But what I like to say is, maybe because I grew up with it and I saw like how for me, I used it to then, I might have introduced myself to somebody and then I wanted to meet them in real life. And it's all about that connection after all, that in real life connection. And so social media, depending on how you use it, can actually like pull you away and create that distance. And I never used it that way. I always used it to like bridge gaps.
Yeah, they say social media can just ruin relationships.
Yeah.
And do you see that among your clients?
Definitely. I think that it kind of perpetuates this emotional avoidance that we tend to have. And I think from the get-go, it's hard to kind of deal with things, have a sense of who you are emotionally as a person, want to meet the other person's needs emotionally. And I think that it's a nice distraction. It's a way of kind of getting away, having this alternate reality of, all of these, friends, followers, and everything else that's happening in a way that doesn't allow for in-person connection. Like, some of my couples, like when they come in, it's like they're both sitting on the couch and they both have their phones out and they're both on their phones. And I was like, guys,
during
this is your
sessions?
Before session.
Oh, wow.
And so in session, obviously they're having a conversation, but I'm also watching them before session because I want to see like that's how they're interacting. That's the dynamic of the interaction in the real world. And they're sitting on, I was like, come on, this is your 2 minutes of like being together, like, have a little chit chat, like talk about what you did during the day.
You gotta check Facebook.
Yes.
Yeah. And what I find when you already are in a relationship and things aren't going well, what exacerbates the problem is that you're presenting a fakeness on social. Like you could just be in the middle of the worst fight, but if it's in front of like something so cool, you will stop and pose and take that photo, post it, hashtag true love, and then get back to the fighting.
Right, right.
Because it's got to be perfect on social.
Yeah,
and what
everybody's a rock star.
And what happens is that you're being so inauthentic that when you're arguing, it's like a split personality because on social you got to keep up the front.
Right.
You can't show that on social.
Right.
And so it just adds to the chaos. And it's again coming down to what's your responsibility. And that's what I love when my clients like the light bulb goes off. Like, wait a minute. One of my clients got into a situation, his wife is pregnant, and they were moving, and of course she's ready to have the baby any minute now. Like I should get a text, and he had to move the last of the boxes, and he was upset because she didn't help at all. And in her mind, she helped. Maybe she helped like put some things away, whatever. Right. And so for a 4-hour plane ride, they didn't speak to each other.
Oh my gosh.
And today we actually had a session today, and when he realized like, you could just hear in him like, I got to get off the phone. I got to go apologize to my wife. Like, I got to go do whatever it is that she wants and everything. Yeah. And it's like when you start taking responsibility for how your relationship is going, it changes everything.
And go ahead.
Oh, yeah. So, okay. So that all makes a lot of sense. But I guess kind of pushing back, a little bit. Like my thing first is that I think social media is here to stay, right? Everyone is going to have a social media profile one way or another, and it's just going to become more intertwined with how folks live their lives, right? But the thing is, at least, I don't know, maybe I'm looking at it from just my point of view, but let's say I'm having a bad day. I'm not necessarily going to go out there and post it to everyone, but if I'm having a good day, or I just took, I just saw, like my, one of my heroes, or like, or I'm at a basketball game or something like that, I'm going to post that. So I guess what I'm saying is, how can you balance that. Because I mean, it's just, to me, like, there's never going to be a point where I'm just going to be like, let me tell the world about how I'm having.
And when we first started dating, that was like a point of contention between us, because he didn't want to post anything, and I thought he was trying to hide me from the world, and then I was like, well, then this will not work, and looking back, it's really stupid,
Right. So what I'm saying is being authentic, right? So when you're in the heat of a moment in an argument, or you're in a fight, but yet you still got to do that selfie. No one wants to do that selfie, but you got to post it because you told your friends that you were going out to, whatever hot spot you were at. So they want to see it. They want to see you snapping with your boyfriend, right? So even though you could be in a straight up argument with them, you still inauthentically post #fabulous relationship or whatever. That's what I'm talking about.
Okay, got it.
And it's when you're posting that duality, when that duality is happening, something's got to crack.
Right.
Something's got to crack. No. And in fact, what you're saying, I agree with. If you're having bad days, that's what your in-life people are for. Your friends, your circle.
Not social media.
Call them up and, yo, I'm having, whatever. But, it's on social, we do want to see some authenticity in you. So like if you bump into so-and-so or whatever, I just posted and it's like social media rule breaking 101, right? I just posted right before right before we came in here, I posted a white hot chocolate that I was having. And it was under the premise of I'm treating myself. I was asked to do a podcast. It's coming out. This is my treat before I go on air, right? How are you treating yourself? And that's how,
self-care.
Yeah, there you go. #, take care of yourself. Treat yourself,
right.
That's what I'm talking about.
Okay.
Not, posting that inauthenticity on social.
So I just want to move on to another topic that is another point of contention for a lot of people: finances. So when one is looking for potential prospects to either commingle with or have a long-term relationship with, I know for myself and a lot of my peers and a lot of my friends, because of the Great Recession, it kind of threw off a lot for us. Obviously, the cost of education, that's, kind of isolated, and then you add the recession on top of that, and it just exacerbated everything, the rising cost of education, and then the shrinking job market in many industries, right? So while our parents probably graduated college and we're like, I'm an adult, I can live independently, I can eat out every day or whatever, maybe some of them, not all of us were feeling that way, at least when I graduated from college. And so when you're looking for a potential partner, how important is it to weigh their financial stability into that decision?
You want to go first? Because I have a total different aspect of everything.
Sure. The way I see it is... it's, again, I'll go back to something I've been saying a lot, which is where am I? And where am I in terms of my employment status? Where am I in terms of meeting my goals? Am I on the right track? And then if I feel like I am kind of moving along in the right track, I obviously want to find someone who's kind of moving along in the same direction as me, right? So I think that if we can kind of be a little flexible, because not everybody meets their goals or not everyone's moving along at the same pace as us. If we can kind of sometimes be flexible about the idea that this person has potential and they have the ability to kind of get where they need to, maybe they're not just there yet, but being patient with them and kind of seeing where it goes is, I think, is the way that I would approach it, as opposed to I'm here and the other person needs to be right here with me making, this much money or be graduating from this school. I think, again, going back to that idea, the more tight and rigid we get about what we want, the harder it is for us to really focus on the things that are important.
Wow.
So I was as broke as can be when I met my husband. And he was broke as can be, right? So my philosophy on that is, what is the goal of your relationship to begin with, right? What is the goal? And I think when you get a job, you see a career path. And and there's other things, right? When you're playing sports, you have a goal, right? To win. Well, what does winning look like for a relationship?
Right.
And there's all these different aspects, and there's a financial part, there's an emotional part, there's a sexual part, and there's all these parts, but none of us seem to see that. We just lump everything up into one. It's a relationship. And is it working? Well, there's different aspects of it, right? And so for me, I know that, like I said, he didn't meet my criteria whatsoever, but it was the compassion and the kindness that won me over. And it got me to slow down. What is what am I trying to build here? Like, what am I trying to build him up against? You know, and what could he possibly be building me up against? So I say all of this, and you know, if the two of you together, the goal is to get $1 million mansion, then I see it. Okay, so what are we going to do to make that happen? You know, but if the goal is just to pay the rent and to have, you know, a couple of vacations throughout the year, then let's make that happen. But what I find is couples don't even have those conversations whatsoever.
No.
You date and you go maybe years without even talking about, you know, hey,
Credit scores,
or, you know, what does your financial, you know, outlook look like,
or what your financial goals are, you know, like
it's something that we don't bring to the table.
Why is that?
And I think it's because we're so personal with it. You know, I think as Americans, we're just so personal with it. We don't ask anybody, well, how much do you make? That's like insulting, right? Like if somebody were to ask
if it's not a lot.
if somebody were to ask you, you're just like, that's none of your business, right? Like that is one thing that we keep so like tight to our vest. And in a relationship, it shouldn't be that way. You know, after you get to a point where like, okay, this we're in it together, then let's bring this all out. Same thing with like parenting.
But what about in the beginning? What because what I'm hearing from you, Dr. Singh, is that you need to be patient and flexible. And what I'm hearing from you, Nando, is that you need to be open and honest. And in the beginning, I mean, isn't it kind of inappropriate to be like, so what's your annual salary? You know, if it's the third date, right? Like,
right. That's too soon,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
I think what I mean is don't go beyond your means, right? Because if you're trying to impress someone and you're maxing out the credit cards, then that's only going to lead to resentment a little bit, like maybe by date 5 or by date 7. Because and then also what you've done is you've set the stage. Oh, this is the level of dating I'm getting with this person, you know? And then all of a sudden you go to Burger King.
right.
And it's like, wait a minute, what is happening here? And, you know, and it's like a bait and switch kind of situation.
Right.
So I think there's always a way of being authentic.
It's actually really funny, yeah.
I think
I don't know. I just look at it, and when I've talked to some of my friends as well, I mean, if you're going on that first date, you know, you want to make sure that you go somewhere that's really nice, that's going to impress the person. Now, you get that one. You know, after that, it may go back to what's, you know, typically there. But I think in the beginning, at least I'm looking at, you know, maybe from my perspective or folks that I've known, is that, you know, you kind of want to at least set the stage so you could at least see how things work out. And then after that, it may go back to what's maybe a little bit more typical, you know, in the future. But
is that what happened with you guys?
So actually, we've never been to Burger King, so I personally can't even eat the food. But we've been to other places, you know. And in the beginning, you know, for our first date, he took me to this amazing speakeasy downtown, and it was awesome. And I guess the next couple of dates, he did try to impress. And then after a while, we both got comfortable, and we just really enjoyed each other's time so much. Right, yeah. We prefer actually not going out. We're very like boring in that kind of, you know, sense. So I guess it really depends on who you're dating, because I mean, I'm glad he did those things in the beginning because it showed that he cared, but it wasn't like a lifestyle sort of that he had to keep up with in order to keep me.
Yeah, and to be fair, I mean, I don't think I ever, you know, stated anything to